We all negotiate every day of our lives with friends and relatives, with co-workers, with merchants. Negotiation is the principal method for trying to get what we want. Now, many lawyers spend a major part of their professional lives negotiating. They negotiate on behalf of clients to settle disputes and to plan transactions. In this videotape, you will see two lawyers as they negotiate a transaction, a contract between their clients. Catherine Wellesley is house counsel for Glascoe Corporation, a major producer of glass products with its corporate headquarters in Cincinnati, Ohio. Glascoe recently learned that its present supplier of custom-made honeycombed fiber cartons is insolvent and no longer able to produce the product. Glascoe uses an average of 6,000 cartons a week and has a 3-week supply on hand. They have located another supplier that can deliver a similar carton for the short term, but one that will allow too much breakage. Glascoe's cost for that carton would be 97 cents. This alternate supplier also can tool up in about 8 weeks to produce a carton that would meet Glascoe's specifications. The price for that carton would be $1.17. Ms. Wellesley is trying to negotiate a deal with Quality Carton, a relatively small manufacturer located in Springfield, Missouri. Glascoe is willing to pay a premium in order to avoid the imminent disruption of its business. If Quality Carton's product is satisfactory, Glascoe might be interested in a long-term agreement also. Harry Martin is a partner in a Springfield, Missouri law firm, and he represents Quality Carton Company. Quality Carton has ample capacity to produce the boxes that Glascoe needs. In addition, it has a very large supply of the P31 box that Glascoe wants. It had produced 25,000 of those boxes for a glassware company that refused delivery, so they are just sitting in its warehouse. Now, it costs Quality Carton $1.16 to manufacture each container, and it would like a 10% profit margin, so Quality would ideally like to sell the cartons for $1.28. However, Quality Carton's management wants to expand its sales beyond its traditional 4-state base and become a national supplier. For that reason, it wants a long-term contract with Glascoe, even if that means selling at cost. Management thinks such an agreement would enable it to reduce production costs and get other national business. In addition, it would very much like to unload the 25,000 cartons that are in its warehouse. Here are the instructions that the lawyers received from their clients. Glascoe has asked Catherine Wellesley to negotiate a contract to fulfill its short-term needs, 6,000 cartons per week for 6 weeks. For the short term, they would be willing to pay up to $1.50 per carton. She may also negotiate a long-term contract, although that is not as important to Glascoe. For the long-term contract, they would be willing to pay only $1.17 per carton, since they can get the boxes for that price from the other supplier. Quality Carton has authorized its lawyer to agree to sell the cartons that are stockpiled for as little as 80 cents each, if necessary to get rid of them. For any new cartons, it would like to get $1.28. So as the negotiations begin, there is a large overlap in the parties' settlement ranges for the short-term contract, but no overlap for the long-term contract. But remember, a long-term contract is extremely important to Quality, even if they have to sell at cost. Notice how the lawyers set forth their positions and how they respond to questions. To what extent are they trying to mislead each other as opposed to being direct?
Well, good morning. It's Miss Wellesley, is it, or Mrs.?
It's Ms. Wellesley.
Ms. Wellesley.
But you can call me Catherine, Harry.
Oh, well, fine, thank you. When did you get in?
Well, I had to leave Cincinnati at about 7:30, and I got in about an hour ago, so I've been waiting about 15 minutes.
Oh, well, I apologize for that. We've had a little fire flare at the firm. And
I know how that can happen.
It's taken a few minutes to deal with it, and unfortunately, it's going to impact on my time. I'm going to have to leave in about an hour to try to resolve the remainder of the problem.
Well, Harry, I hope that we're going to be able to work something out in an hour. I am interested in taking a look at this box.
Well, this seems to be a pretty straightforward, uncomplicated project we're on, at least from what I've heard from our sales manager, and hopefully you'll have some time. When's your flight?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock? Oh.
5 o'clock. So I've
then,
got plenty of time today.
You can even see Silver Dollar City.
Right.
Just out of here. Well, I know a little bit about why you're here, but perhaps you could tell me what Glasgow has in mind.
Well, we are looking at your P31 box. We are interested in it because we recognize that it's a quality product. And basically what we need is 6,000 boxes a week. And of course we're very concerned. One of our concerns is that you are a small company. We want to make sure that you will be able to produce that amount. Is there any problem with that?
Well, if there is a problem, you put your finger on it. Quality Carton is, in our estimation, the Cadillac of cardboard in the industry. We emphasize quality. That's our sales forte, if you will. We are a relatively small producer. 6,000 a week is a little more production than we are running at the time. On the other hand, we're very interested in Glasgow. But 6,000 a week would cause us to shortchange our present customers, at least for a time, until we can get tooled up to deal with the volume.
Well, Harry, you realize that we are a large company, reliable supply need company, and certainly if you affiliate with us, the chances are that you're going to get some nationwide exposure and probably end up with more customers in the long run.
We're interested in Glasgow, but I'm not sure we're interested at the point that we want to jeopardize our current business.
Well, that's your choice. Our concern is that, in fact, you're able to produce 6,000 and deliver them on time. If you're not, then there's really no point in us talking about this. We had understood from your sales manager that you probably were going to be in a position to do that. Is that not correct?
No, the possibility of doing it is certainly there. The question is whether or not we want to put all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Well, tell me what kind of price you're talking about. Is that what
well,
this
let me
is
ask
leading
you
up to?
first. That price is certainly a critical issue, but first, what sort of alternate supply do you have in mind if things don't work out with quality carton?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Harry. I think that's probably our business as to what our alternative suppliers are. We obviously have investigated other resources, and what we're interested in is finding out what you've got to offer, what your price is, whether or not you can meet our production. We're obviously interested in you, or I wouldn't have come all the way down to Springfield to talk to you about this today.
Well, we're aware that most of our competition is in the category of pack 'em and crack 'em. We're the ones that produce the quality that attracts high-quality manufacturers, if you will.
We agree. We wouldn't even be talking to you today if it weren't for the fact that you've got a product that we think we can live with.
If we go to 6,000 a week, we're going to have to put on an extra shift for our production facilities. And that's going to require, obviously, more employees and more expenses.
Harry, what kind of price are you talking about?
Well, what kind of sort of price do you have in mind? What's Glasgow thinking about?
We've done some research in the market, and we think 95 is about what would be a fair price for this product.
95 cents a box won't do it for us. We cannot do it for 95 cents a box.
Now, what are you talking about? That's what I asked you the first time.
The ballpark target that my management's given to me is in the neighborhood of $1.50 to $1.45
Per box?
per box.
Harry, we like your boxes. We don't love your boxes. Now, you know, that's way out of line with what the market is.
With our boxes, your cost savings will be extensive, much greater than you've had with your other suppliers. You won't have the breakage factor to worry about.
We have not had a breakage problem in the past with our supplier.
Why then aren't you staying with your current supplier?
We are interested in finding out alternative suppliers, what alternative price we might be able to get. But quality in the past has not been our concern.
Well, then we should, I should give you the bottom line figure that my management's given to me and decide if it's appropriate for us to continue discussions or maybe we can find something more pleasant to do with our time. The basement price that I've been given is $1.35 a box.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think that's an unfair price. I think that you're taking advantage of us, but under the circumstances, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accept that price on behalf of Glasgow.
Well, Kate, you're not going to regret this. You're going to find that your customers are going to be very happy with you, that you will have very little breakage, you'll have very little complaint, and this...
Harry, we better not have any breakage with these boxes at $1.35 a carton.
Well, let's move on to other terms. You've said 6,000 cartons a week.
6,000 a week.
Okay. How do you want them delivered? In what sort of segments?
Well, I need to have delivery start in 2 weeks.
Delivery in 2 weeks for a 2-week quantity, or?
Yes, 2 weeks at a
2-week
time.
quantity. All right, let's talk about payment terms a bit. As I said, we're going to have to put on some extra people, and we're going to have to run an evening shift. This is going to cause cash flow problems for us because we're going to have a greater salary requirement in the interim. To meet the cash flow, we're going to need to have payment up front in advance
That's
on a
no
2-week
problem.
basis.
You want cash, right?
Yes.
You want cash up front?
Yep.
And we have no problem with that.
Okay, so you pay prior to delivery, and the delivery terms, FOB, Springfield?
FOB Springfield, that's the industry norm.
Okay, so you've got transportation and insurance from
Springfield.
Springfield.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, now here you do understand that I want these starting in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And this will continue for a 6-week period. Basically, that's all I'm interested in at this price. So,
6 weeks. What about beyond 6 weeks? What happens then?
we're not interested after 6 weeks. At $1.35, that's out of the question. So basically, I need 3 deliveries every 2 weeks, 6,000 per week. So that'd be 12,000 per delivery.
My management's
We'll
not going to
pay
be
cash.
very happy with this. I can tell you.
What do you mean your management's not going to be happy at $1.35?
$1.35 is fine short term, but we're as I said, jeopardizing our current market share and the current market segment that we're serving, putting on people in addition to our normal workforce.
What are you saying? You want a longer-term contract?
I think a longer-term contract is certainly what what Quality Carton had in mind when we began these discussions.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Glasgow had a long-term contract in mind too, but I haven't been, real pleased with the way in which these negotiations have gone. $1.35. I understand your position. I understand that your company can't do it for less than that, and that's your bottom line. But obviously we can't accept that. We have an alternative supplier that can give it to us at a substantially lower rate than us. We need them for 6 weeks. That's it. Any other terms we need to discuss?
So essentially, we've got a 6-week deal at $1.35, cash in advance.
Yeah.
Well, I think our management will live with it, but they're not going to be pleased. There is one other term that we ought to discuss. I've been instructed that our executive requires an arbitration clause in the contract.
Okay, well, what do you want included in the arbitration clause?
What do you mean, what do I want to include? I don't want to go to court. Our management doesn't want to go to court. They've been burned in litigation, in trials. We don't want to go to litigation. We want to arbitrate. That's what we want.
Okay, well, I'll be frank with you. I don't have any authority to enter into an agreement with you concerning arbitration clause. I'm going to have to go back and talk to my management in order to resolve that question. We have had some experience in the past with both arbitration and mediation clauses. Why don't I put together a contract that includes that if, in fact, my group will agree to it and send it out to you, and you can take a look at it and see if you would like anything else included.
Let me just explore with my management just specifically what they want in arbitration and what they mean by arbitration. It probably would be more expeditious for me to draft this agreement, and I can have it on a fax to you by the time you get back to Cincinnati.
That's fine. This is a little deal.
Okay,
Shouldn't take
so
much problem.
I'll wrap this up, and we've got a short-term contract, arbitration, and I suppose we'll be talking to each other over boilerplate.
Okay, well, it looks like you're going to have plenty of time to get to your appointment, Harry.
Well, I think so, and I hope you enjoy Silver.
Commentators have identified two approaches to negotiation: adversarial and problem solving. An adversarial negotiator often assumes that the main goal is to get or keep as much as possible of a scarce resource, such as money or land. In this view, of course, what one gains, the other must lose. This is why such negotiations are often called win-lose. Adversarial negotiators generally emphasize positions rather than interests. The difference between positions and interests is this: a position is a specific demand. An interest is what lies behind the demand, what the party really needs. In the negotiation you have just observed, for instance, the lawyers focused on the prices of the boxes. They quickly became locked into discussing their positions rather than their clients' interests. In problem-solving negotiations, on the other hand, the goal is to achieve an agreement that satisfies the underlying interests of all concerned parties. This kind of solution is often called win-win. In the negotiations we have just watched, the lawyers asserted positions on specific prices. Although they discussed positions more than interests, the agreement did serve some short-term interests of their clients. Glasgow averted a short-term disruption in deliveries, and Quality Carton unloaded a large stock of the cartons and made a substantial profit. In that sense, the negotiators were successful. However, they neglected their clients' underlying mutual interests in a long-term business relationship. Common adversarial techniques include a high initial demand. In this negotiation, both lawyers opened with positions that were far removed from what they expected to end up with. Apparent commitment to positions, shown in this case by Harry Martin's adherence to his price demand. Limited disclosure of information about facts and one's own preferences. In this negotiation, Catherine Wellesley failed to explain that her client's supplier had gone out of business, and she refused to discuss the alternative source of cartons. All these techniques are ways for adversarial negotiators to mislead their opponents. This negotiation illustrated other behavior that could have been misleading. Harry Martin may have fabricated his time constraints. He also misrepresented his client's situation. He hid the fact that Quality Carton has a large stock of the boxes, and he stated that Quality would have to add workers to produce the needed cartons. He did this in order to justify the high price he was demanding. In this case, his strategy was only partially successful. Catherine Wellesley apparently believed his story. For that reason, and because of her client's desperate situation, she did not make a counteroffer. Instead, she accepted the $1.35 price, but she protected her client by agreeing only to a short-term contract. In this negotiation, the risks of an unsatisfactory outcome were exacerbated by Harry Martin's extremely misleading conduct. Adversarial negotiations do not always yield unsatisfactory results. There are situations when adversarial negotiation will bring about the best result for a client. For instance, sometimes in situations where clients will have only one transaction, that is, where they do not desire further business dealings, one side might do better financially using an adversarial negotiation approach. In this case, if Quality had wanted only to get rid of its supply of P31s and for some reason did not want to deal in the future with Glasgow, Harry Martin might have struck a very good bargain for his client. Problem-solving negotiation is marked by an emphasis on the underlying interests of the parties instead of their positions. This involves disclosing information that an adversarial negotiator might keep secret. In addition, the negotiators normally search for options that will promote gain for both parties. After the session we have just watched, both attorneys reported to their clients. The clients were disappointed with the proposed agreement and asked the lawyers to continue negotiating toward a more suitable long-term arrangement. In the next segment, you'll see a combination of problem-solving and adversarial negotiation, with an emphasis on problem-solving.
My client is not satisfied with this contract, and they have instructed me to sit down with you again and talk to you about whether or not we can get the price down. $1.35 they think is unreasonable. And also, Harry, I want to be frank with you, we're interested in a long-term relationship with you all. And my client would like to see if we can't work out a price that we could live with for the long term.
Well, Quality Carton is reciprocally enamored of Glasgow and the relationship, and I've been so instructed to ensure that we try to achieve some sort of a long-term relationship.
Do you think you can come off that $1.35 price?
Well,
because that's just an absolute barrier for us.
To preserve the retainer relationship I have with my client, I'm going to have to come up with something that's acceptable to both sides. It's difficult to take any discrete element in the overall relationship and agree on it in isolation without seeing how everything fits together,
Sure,
how all
absolutely.
pieces of the puzzle work. Let's see if
let me be just frank with you. I've got to have boxes right away. Our supplier has gone bankrupt, and I've got to have some boxes right away. That's why we are even considering the $1.35 for 6 weeks. That's the only reason that we would consider going that high. Obviously, we are not willing to do that in the long term. And also, if you charge us $1.35 in the short run, we think you're unreasonable, and we're not going to want to have a long-term relationship with you. That's just the way my client feels.
All right. Again, after we see how the initial price fits with the rest of it, my client is very interested in a long-term relationship. My management will be willing to take a look at this initial price and quite probably move on it to some level of satisfaction.
Let's look at the long term. Let's talk about that.
Great, that's where we have to go. What happens after 6 weeks? What does Glasgow have in mind after the 6-week period?
Well, as I said, we're interested in a long-term contract. I've got another supplier for the long term if you don't pan out. We are looking at Builtwell. I'm sure you're familiar with them. They've got a good product also. They can retool and get production facilities at a level that we need, and they're going to charge us $1.17 a box. So that's basically the competition. Obviously, we're not going to go above $1.17 a box because we have an alternate supplier at that rate. We think it's to your advantage to hook up with us. We're a good, solid company. It's going to give you a national reputation. You know, we're going to talk you up when we go to our trade association if we can develop a favorable relationship. We're a quality organization. Not going to nickel and dime you to death.
Well,
I think it's worth it.
There's no doubt that Glasgow would be a great advantage to us, a great asset to us in expanding into a national market. As we've discussed, Quality Carton is a relatively small manufacturer. We emphasize the upscale end of the market. We service a local market. We have a local market segment, normally dealing with manufacturers of highly fragile products.
You don't have to tell me, Harry. I agree with all that already.
Well, I'm coming around to making a
getting
comment.
to the price, huh?
Exactly. We're making a comment about Builtwell here. Builtwell is in the spectrum of the market that's pack 'em and crack 'em. They just they don't last.
Yeah, they've got a product, though, that we think is going to be satisfactory. Now, admittedly, they haven't produced it, and you've got a P31 that I can actually look at and know it's going to meet my needs. So there is a certain risk for us going with Builtwell. But it's not a substantial risk because they basically are going to duplicate your product for us. And so we're pretty sure that at $1.17 we're going to get a comparable product. You know, we just aren't going to go above $1.17 on this.
Okay. But let's just note here, for purposes of discussion, there is some risk factor. It may not be large. But
Sure.
Builtwell,
There is certainly some risk factor.
All right.
Now, on the other hand, my client is real concerned about you actually being able to produce. Builtwell already has somewhat of a national reputation, and my client is real concerned when you talk about having to retool your whole facilities and putting on second shifts and stuff like that. I don't know what your unemployment is down here about how you're going to get the labor in to do that, but we've got to have some kind of guarantee that you can get those 6,000 boxes out every week.
Well,
That's absolutely essential to us.
I can appreciate that. We can give you some contractual guarantees.
What do you mean, contractual guarantees?
We can build in some penalty clauses that would cost us significantly in the event that we weren't able to perform.
Okay, I'm a little concerned about penalty clauses, and the reason for that is because I don't know that you're big enough to absorb the kind of losses that we might incur to our national reputation if we can't supply our customers. You've got to give us, we've got to know a little bit more about you, about whether or not you really can produce like this.
Well, you'll appreciate that there is a certain element of gamesmanship and puffery in some of these negotiations. And
a little bit, yeah.
So in candor, I'll tell you frankly that we do have some inventory backlog of the P-31s, and we can supply at least the initial 6-week order.
You've got the 6 weeks on hand?
We've got approximately 6 weeks on hand.
Fantastic.
And that can be
That's what we are worried about, is this transitional period. So you've actually got them in supply.
Exactly.
You can deliver them right away.
We can deliver them right away.
Great. At what price?
That's something that I think we need to consider in relationship to all the rest of the provisions in terms of this relationship. Let me tell you a little bit about what Quality Carton hopes to achieve from this. We can service Glasgow's needs out of our current production without touching inventory if we wished.
Okay.
But we are interested in developing a national market, and Glasgow would be a great foundation from which to develop that. We would hope to employ revenues generated from the Glasgow relationship to help us to upgrade our production facilities so that we can service other customers. We would dedicate our...
You're talking about a cash flow problem then.
I'm talking about cash
flow.
and flow.
You need some upfront cash.
We need some upfront cash. We also need to make some sort of a margin on what we sell to Glasgow over the term of the contract.
Hey, I don't have any objection to a profit.
Great.
What does it cost you to produce one of these boxes?
Right now, it costs us $1.16 a box. I mean, these are upgrade, high end of the market products, and our costs are significantly greater than industry standards because of the quality of the product. So it's $1.16 just as a break even for us. We've got the...
Do you think you can live with $1.17 as a long-term price? There's not a lot of room there for us to negotiate.
How long a term?
A year. I regard that as kind of a minimum long-term relationship.
Well, that gives us a penny a box.
Paperwork.
Exactly. It gives us only a penny a box profit, but it does give us this foundation for the introduction to the national market.
Now, one thing I'm a little concerned about, though, is that we know what the P-31 looks like that you've got on display. We haven't had any experience with you, though, about your reliability, quality control, etc. How about a probationary period where, let's say, at $1.16, a break-even point? Okay, a probationary period for a short term, and then move up to $1.17 a box so that for a full year you would have that, and then after that we'd be in a position to renegotiate.
That sounds in principle reasonable. We'd have discussing a 3-month probationary period?
Yes.
At a break-even, at the end of which, if we have performed satisfactorily, we would go to $1.17 for how long of a period?
A year.
All right, so we've got 15 months we're working on here on a long-term relationship. We can give you certain other assurances as well on our ability to deliver and our quality control. We can put you in touch with some of our other customers.
Okay, great. What about this 6-week supply now, though? We have not yet dealt with that. Are you willing to sell that also at $1.16?
We could not do it at $1.16. We're not going to be making much over the remaining 15-month period.
On the other hand, you've got them in supply already.
And we have them in supply already. We can, given what you've offered here for the long term, we can certainly move on that initial price. As we said, or as we discussed, Biltwell is a potential supplier, but you've got to admit they're not available to you right now. You don't have Biltwell. And when you do get Biltwell, there'll still be a question, some risk factor, which we've identified as to whether or not they'll actually be able to produce a product that meets your needs.
Well, you know, I don't think it's unreasonable to give you a premium on
Good.
these initial boxes because we are in a spot. On the other hand, I'm not going to enter into an unreasonable relationship with you in the beginning because I don't intend for that to continue in the future.
I've got authority to go to $1.20 a box.
I think my client would be very satisfied with that.
Oh, that's a relief. Good. So for 6
Okay.
weeks, we got $1.20, $1.16 for the 3-month probationary, and $1.17 for the for the 12 months following that.
Harry, I think we got a deal.
That sounds great.
That's wonderful.
Oh.
Now, same thing with the other terms, FOB Springfield. You want your cash up front
Cash up
still?
front, that'll help us out. Not so much, obviously, on the temporary help and that sort of thing, but on and starting to develop a fund from which to finance the
We have no
ultimate.
problem with cash up front. That's a standard thing for us
Great.
to do.
We
Now, what about this arbitration clause?
we still need the arbitration. I confess, and it became obvious that my background in arbitration is so tenuous that I'm having difficulty coming up with specific suggestions. But
Okay.
perhaps I can draw
when
on.
I talked to my client, they indicated that if we did get into a long-term relationship, they want something more comprehensive than just an arbitration clause. They want a whole dispute resolution clause.
Do you have some standard clauses at hand?
Harry, I have had facts down here from my office, some suggested clauses that we've used in other contracts that we've entered into. How about, I don't know, do you have time to sit down now and draft up a contract that we might be able to send back to our principals?
My management has cleared my schedule.
Great.
So it's clear sailing. If you'd be willing, maybe we could sit down and just do the whole contract and scratch it out.
Sounds good to me. Let's
Great.
do it.
Let's do it. Catherine, thank you.
Thank you, Harry.
In the second session, we saw an increased emphasis on interests over positions. Both negotiators stressed their clients' interests in a long-term relationship. Discussing interests required them to reveal information they kept secret during the first negotiation session when they had more adversarial attitudes. For example, Catherine Wellesley disclosed that her client's supplier was bankrupt, and they were desperate for the boxes. And Harry Martin revealed that his client had a large stock of the boxes. These negotiators, like all others, seem to experience a tension between their adversarial inclinations and their problem-solving inclinations. A negotiator who reveals information in an adversarial setting risks being exploited. On the other hand, one who does not reveal his or her true underlying interests is less likely to reach an agreement that satisfies those interests. For example, Harry Martin must have had trepidations about telling Catherine Wellesley that his client had plenty of the boxes in stock. He might have feared that she would push him to an unreasonable price. But unless he gave her this information, he could not satisfy her client's need to know that Quality Carton actually could supply the boxes. Now, some viewers might think that in the long-term contract, Quality has made a bad bargain. 3 months at a break-even price, followed by 9 months at a 1 cent per box profit, might not seem worthwhile. But consider the circumstances. First, for the boxes it has on hand, Quality is getting a very good price. Second, it is getting much needed upfront cash. And third, and most important, the company very much wants to break into the national market and believes that a long-term contract with Glasgow will help it do that. Now, in this videotape, we have illustrated 2 approaches to negotiation: adversarial and problem-solving, and shown how a negotiator can use both approaches in the same negotiation. Now, how best to negotiate depends on many circumstances, including the needs of both clients and the approach taken by the opposing negotiator. The point is to avoid negotiating based on habits and general rules. Instead, be alert to the unique circumstances and opportunities of each case.